Aiden Ward learned early in life that goodbyes never sounded like they were supposed to. They didn't come with soft music, warm hugs, or those dramatic last looks you see in movies. In his house, goodbyes came quietly, doors closing in the middle of the night, voices arguing through walls, the sound of suitcases dragged across hardwood floors when everyone else pretended to be asleep. He was 6 the first time he realized people could disappear without warning. His father had been the kind of presence you felt before you truly saw. Loud boots, leftover cologne, the deep voice that made walls hum. But one morning, the house was still. There were no boots, no cologne, no hum. His mother stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee she never drank, staring at nothing in particular. When he asked where Dad went, she only said, he needed space, as if space was something a person could run out of and had to go find somewhere else. Aiden didn't understand much then. He only understood that someone could be here one day and gone the next. Over the years, this understanding calcified into something heavier. His mother had a habit of disappearing too, not permanently, but emotionally. She would drift through days like she was somewhere far away, even when sitting in the same room. Some afternoons, she'd be present and cheerful. Others, she'd shut down and leave Aiden feeling like he was talking to a locked door. The one person who stayed somewhat steady was his sister, Eva. But even she carried an exhaustion he didn't have words for. She was 12 when their father left, and she aged in ways that didn't involve birthdays. Too fast, too quietly. Eva became the one who made lunches, who checked homework, who tried to soften the impact of the silence their mother left behind. Aiden depended on her presence more than he ever admitted, even into adulthood. And yet, even with Eva, the fear stayed. What if she gets tired? What if one day she doesn't come back through the door? Those early years built a kind of mental architecture inside him. Every room in his mind had an exit. Every relationship had a countdown he could almost hear ticking. He didn't resent people for leaving. He just believed that leaving was what people eventually did. By the time he reached adulthood, he wasn't angry, just certain. It shaped the way he spoke, gently and non-intrusively. It shaped the way he lived, never taking up more space than necessary. It shaped the way he loved, quietly from a safe distance, like someone admiring fragile art behind glass. Friends described him as calm, easygoing, unbothered. What they didn't realize was that he simply didn't expect them to stay long enough to handle the real, messy version of him. So he learned to be convenient, predictable, low maintenance, the kind of person you could enjoy without ever truly knowing. Now at 30, Aiden lives alone in a small apartment that felt intentionally temporary, even though he'd been there for 3 years. The walls are clean but undecorated. No photos, no framed memories, nothing that looks like it was meant to last. Even the furniture feels like placeholder pieces, things bought with the unspoken assumption that someday he'd move, start over, or pack up quickly if life required it. At work, he keeps conversations light. With acquaintances, he stays agreeable. With potential friends, he steps carefully. And deep inside, where nobody can see, he maintains the quiet belief that people drift, distance happens, and closeness has an expiration date. He doesn't blame anyone. It's just the way life has always been. But things begin to shift the day someone enters his world who isn't so easily discouraged by walls. Someone who doesn't interpret his distance as disinterest. Someone who, for the first time in a long time, makes him wonder if the pattern he's lived by isn't destiny, but a wound. That someone is Mara Lynn, and her arrival will challenge everything he's convinced himself to believe. Aiden never tried to be invisible. He just tried to be easy. There's a difference. Invisible people want to disappear. Aiden simply wanted to take up the amount of space that wouldn't inconvenience anybody. The kind of space people don't trip over, don't question, don't get attached to. At work, he had become a master of this. He arrived on time, left on time, and blended into the soft background noise of the office. He wasn't forgettable exactly. People liked him. They nodded at him in the kitchen, joked with him near the printer, invited him to group lunches he rarely attended, but nobody ever really looked at him. And that was the point. What nobody knew was how carefully this version of Aiden was constructed. Every laugh was measured, every opinion softened, every vulnerability packed neatly away. He didn't do it consciously anymore. It had become muscle memory, a survival instinct disguised as politeness. He learned long ago that the less people needed from you, the less they could be disappointed by you. And the less they were disappointed, the longer they stayed, at least in theory. His co-worker Jonas Hale was the perfect example of this dynamic. Jonas was the sort of person who filled every room he walked into, loud, funny, radiating the type of confidence that makes conversations orbit around him. He and Aiden shared a desk cluster, which made interaction unavoidable. Jonas liked Aiden, thought he was chill, which in Jonas language translated to, "You don't challenge me, you don't need me, you're easy to be around." It worked for both of them. Jonas needed an audience. Aiden needed someone who didn't mind doing most of the talking. But even with Jonas, someone who considered him a friend, Aiden kept a quiet distance. While Jonas talked about weekend plans, messy dating stories, and minor office drama, Aiden contributed just enough to be present, never enough to be seen. It was like emotional minimalism. No extra attachments, no clutter, no chance of someone noticing the parts he didn't want inspected. Outside of work, his life followed similar patterns. He had acquaintances he met for coffee occasionally, but he kept it light. He had people he texted every few weeks, but only in safe, surface-level ways. He was the kind of person others described as steady, nice, or good to talk to, but rarely as close. And he convinced himself that this was intentional, a choice, a healthy boundary. But the truth was quieter and far more fragile. Closeness felt like a cliff's edge, and distance felt like solid ground. Aiden maintained these patterns for years because they protected him, because they kept the world predictable, because if nobody got too close, nobody could leave in a way that tore him open. It wasn't loneliness, at least not the dramatic kind. It was a quieter, subtler loneliness, the type you can live with, the type that doesn't demand attention, the type that becomes part of you. And then Mara Lynn entered his life. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day that should have been forgettable. Aiden was waiting for the elevator when she stepped beside him. Dark hair tucked behind one ear, a sketchbook under her arm, a lanyard that suggested she was new. She didn't do the polite avoid eye contact thing most people did. She smiled first, brightly, like she meant it. "Hey," she said, "you're Aiden, right?" He blinked. He was not used to being recognized instantly. "Yeah," he replied. "We've met?" "Not yet," she said. "Jonas showed me around yesterday. He pointed at you and said, 'That guy keeps the peace in this office.'" Aiden almost choked on air. Jonas would say something like that. Mara shifted the sketchbook in her hand. "I'm in design. Just started Monday." He nodded. "Welcome then." "Thanks. I'm still learning everyone's faces." She paused, studying him for a second longer than felt normal. "You have one of those faces that feels familiar." He didn't know what to say to that. Compliments always felt like unexpected gifts, nice, but confusing. The elevator arrived. They stepped in. Most people would fill the silence with small talk or stare at their phones. But Mara, she just stood comfortably, hands clasped behind her back, humming softly under her breath like she belonged anywhere she stood. There was something disarming about her, something steady in a way Aiden wasn't used to. When the elevator doors opened on their floor, she looked at him again. "See you around, Aiden." Her tone wasn't casual. It carried intention, like she meant it, literally. And for reasons he couldn't explain, something in his chest tightened. Not unpleasantly, more like a signal flare of awareness. This person is different. This person notices things. This person might not stay at the distance he prefers. And for the first time, in a long time, Aiden felt the faintest tremor of fear that wasn't about losing something, but about being seen. Aiden didn't expect Mara to remember him after that first elevator ride. Most people interacted with him the way you interact with a lamppost, useful to have around, vaguely familiar, but not something you think about once you've passed it. But Mara? She remembered. The next morning, she spotted him in the break room and waved like they'd known each other for years. Not a polite nod, not a small smile, a full wave, like he was someone worth acknowledging. "You're here early," she said, pouring herself tea instead of coffee. "Are you always one of the first ones in?" Aiden hesitated. "I guess so." "Me too," she said. "Mornings feel quieter, like the world hasn't fully decided who it wants to be yet." He didn't know how to respond to that, but he found himself smiling anyway, small, involuntary, and real. Over the next few days, Mara didn't push. She didn't overwhelm. She simply appeared. Sometimes in the break room, sometimes waiting for the elevator, sometimes passing by his desk with a gentle, "Hey, how's your day going?" She didn't pry. She didn't assume. She didn't ask for anything. But she saw him. And Aiden, who was used to being a soft outline in everyone's peripheral vision, didn't know what to do with that. One afternoon, during a lull in work, she pulled up a chair beside his desk without asking. Most people would have hesitated at his subtle distance, but Mara didn't seem bothered by his quiet. "I'm trying to sketch people who look like they're thinking too much," she said. "Mind if I practice?" Aiden blinked. "On me?" "Yeah, you've got the perfect expression. Thoughtful, but in a way that's a little sad." She paused, then added, "Not in a bad way. It's like you're carrying weather inside your head." He stared at her. Nobody had ever described him like that. Nobody had ever noticed him like that. A lot of people would have apologized after saying something so intimate. Mara didn't. She simply opened her sketchbook and began to draw. Quick strokes, confident lines, her brow slightly furrowed. Aiden returned to his computer, but he didn't actually type anything. He was too aware of her presence, the sound of pencil against paper, the occasional soft sigh she made when she concentrated. When she finally turned the sketchbook around, Aiden felt his breath hitch. She had drawn him. Not the polite office version of him. Not the quiet, agreeable Aiden people saw, but the Aiden he felt like internally. There was a depth in the eyes, a weariness, a softness that looked unprotected. "It's not exact," she said, "but it's you." He didn't speak. Couldn't, really. The drawing felt like someone had reached into his chest and pulled out something he spent years keeping hidden. "Is it okay?" she asked gently. Aiden nodded. "It's good." It was the most truthful thing he'd said all week. From that moment, something shifted. Mara didn't become just a co-worker. She became a presence. a steady, gentle orbit in his day. She somehow knew when to talk and when to let silence settle comfortably between them. People like Mara were rare. People who didn't force closeness but still offered it freely. People who didn't ask him to be more than he could be, yet made him consider being more anyway. Aiden didn't know what to do with her friendship. Part of him wanted to lean into it. Another part whispered warnings. Be careful. People like her don't stay. Don't get used to this. Don't let her see too much. But Mara didn't back away. Not from his quietness, not from his hesitation, not from the invisible walls he kept trying to rebuild. In fact, she seemed to understand something nobody else had. That he wasn't cold, just cautious. One Friday evening, as they were heading out at the same time, she walked with him to the parking lot. The sun was low, turning the building windows gold. She looked at him with a kind of thoughtful softness. You know, she said, you're easy to be around. Aiden swallowed. Compliments from Mara felt different, more layered, less throwaway. Before he could respond, she added, but I get the sense you don't let many people close. His chest tightened. I'm not great at that. I know, she said simply. No judgment, no questions, just acknowledgement. But that's okay. Some people take time. She smiled, warm and patient. I'm not in a hurry. Aiden looked at her for a long moment, unsure whether to feel seen or exposed. Maybe both. Because for the first time, someone wasn't interpreting his distance as disinterest. She was interpreting it as fear, and she wasn't walking away. For a while, Aiden convinced himself that nothing was changing. He still kept his routines, still kept people at arm's length, still maintained the quiet, manageable version of himself that made life predictable. But Mara's presence had a way of slipping into the seams of his days. She didn't force deep conversations, but she also didn't let everything stay surface level. When she asked how he was, she actually listened. When he said he was fine, she'd tilt her head slightly, just enough to show she didn't believe him, but not enough to make him uncomfortable. And slowly, almost accidentally, Aiden let small pieces of himself slip into their conversations. A childhood memory here, a fear disguised as a joke there, a sigh he didn't hide fast enough. It wasn't closeness, at least not the kind he feared. It was something softer, something that felt like standing near an open door, but not walking through it. But closeness, even in small doses, was still closeness, and closeness came with risk. When life was calm, Aiden managed it. But calm never lasts. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday. Work piled up faster than he could manage. He'd barely slept the night before, his mind caught in one of those spirals that only show up when the world is too quiet. By noon, he felt frayed, one small inconvenience away from unraveling. He kept his head down, trying to stay invisible in the way he knew best. If people didn't look too closely, they wouldn't notice the cracks. But Mara noticed. She always noticed. Around mid-afternoon, she stopped by his desk with 2 drinks, 1 coffee, 1 tea. I wasn't sure what you'd want, she said softly, so I grabbed both. It was meant to be kind, simple, thoughtful, but Aiden felt something inside him tighten too fast, too hard. Kindness felt like pressure when he didn't know how to accept it, and attention, even gentle attention, felt dangerous when he wasn't at his best. I'm okay, he said quickly, too quickly. You don't have to do that. Mara paused. I know I don't have to. I just thought, I'm fine, he repeated, sharper this time. The words weren't cruel, but they were colder than he intended, enough for Mara's expression to flicker, hurt. confusion, then something like understanding. She set the drinks down anyway. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll give you space." She walked away, giving him exactly what he asked for, and Aiden immediately regretted it. This was what he did: push away before anyone got close enough to see the mess. He called it independence, protectiveness, self-sufficiency. But deep down, he knew what it really was: fear disguised as control. The rest of the day passed like a slow bruise. Every time he glimpsed Mara across the office, she was her normal self, smiling at co-workers, sketching at her desk, laughing at something Jonas said. She didn't look upset. She didn't look distant. But she also didn't come by again. Aiden felt the absence more than he expected. That evening, as they packed up to leave, fate, or maybe coincidence, placed them side by side at the elevator. Mara gave him a small, polite smile. Not cold, but different. Reserved. It hit him harder than her anger would have. "You okay?" she asked. He swallowed. "Yeah, about earlier. Sorry. I wasn't in a great headspace." "I figured," she said gently. "You don't have to apologize. But you also don't have to shut me out when things get heavy." He looked away. "I'm not good at letting people help." "I know," she said. "But I'm not trying to fix you, Aiden. I just don't want you to feel like you have to face everything alone." Her voice wasn't demanding or emotional, just sincere, and sincerity was the hardest thing for him to stand in front of. He exhaled slowly. "It's just easier to keep distance. For me." Mara nodded. "I get that. But sometimes distance isn't protection. It's isolation wearing a superhero cape." Aiden let out a quiet laugh despite himself. "That's strangely accurate." They stepped into the elevator. The air between them wasn't tense, but it carried something fragile, like both of them were measuring their words, aware of the delicate balance. As the doors opened on the ground floor, Mara paused before stepping out. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, "even if you pull back sometimes." Aiden froze. Nobody had ever said that to him. Not once. Mara offered a soft smile. Gentle, patient, steady. "But you have to meet me halfway, eventually. Even a little." She walked out into the late afternoon light, leaving Aiden standing there with his heart beating in a rhythm he didn't recognize. Because for the first time, someone wasn't leaving when he withdrew. She was waiting. And waiting meant possibility. The shift happened on a night that should have been ordinary. A Tuesday, late, the kind of quiet evening when people binge shows, heat leftovers, and pretend tomorrow isn't already pressing against the edges of their thoughts. Aiden had planned for exactly that. He went home, microwaved dinner, sat on the couch with a half-watched documentary playing in the background. A routine night. Comfortably predictable, comfortably empty. But then his phone rang. Ava. She rarely called. Texted occasionally, sure, but calling meant something was wrong. He answered immediately. "Hey, what's... Aiden?" Her voice cracked. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. "What happened?" I'm at the hospital. Can you come?" The words hit like a cold wave. He didn't ask questions, didn't pause. He grabbed his coat and keys and left within seconds, his heart beating in a wild, uncontrolled rhythm. In moments like this, all the distance, all the emotional self-preservation, all the practiced calm, none of it mattered. Family fear bypassed everything. When he arrived, Ava was sitting in a hard plastic chair under fluorescent lights, her face pale and tight around the edges. "A car accident," she said. "I'm okay, just bruised. But my mind kept replaying things and I just needed someone." needed someone. Aiden's chest tightened at how rarely she allowed herself those words. He sat beside her, and for a long moment they didn't speak. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder, awkward but solid. A gesture he rarely used, a gesture she rarely accepted. But tonight, she leaned into it. They stayed there until the doctor cleared her to leave. He drove her home, helped her inside, checked the fridge, made sure she had ice packs and easy meals. He stayed longer than she asked, because something in him wouldn't let him walk away yet. By the time he finally returned to his own apartment, it was past midnight. And that's when the crash happened. Not physically, but mentally. Fear does that. You hold it together through the crisis, only to fall apart in the safety that follows. Aiden walked into his empty apartment, turned on the kitchen, light, and froze. The loneliness hit like a blunt force impact. All the years of emotional distance, all the quiet coping, all the "I don't need anyone," all the "I'm fine on my own." It felt suddenly, brutally hollow. He sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, and let his head drop into his hands. Not crying, just unraveling. The kind of unraveling you don't even notice happening until you're already in pieces. His breathing stuttered. His chest tightened. His thoughts spiraled. What if Ava hadn't been okay? What if he lost the one person who had been there since the beginning? What if... The door of his mind swung wide open, and every fear he kept locked inside came rushing out. He wasn't okay. Not remotely. And because he had spent years building his life on emotional self-sufficiency, he had no one to call. No one he trusted enough to show this version of himself to. Except one person flashed into his mind. Mara, her voice, her steadiness, the way she said she wasn't going anywhere, the way she looked at him like he was allowed to need things. He tried to push the thought away. He didn't want to pull her into his storm. Didn't want to be the person who called someone at 1 a.m. with shaky breathing and nothing articulate to say. But the harder he tried to resist, the more the silence closed in around him. And suddenly, before he fully realized what he was doing, he grabbed his phone. His thumb hovered over her name. He almost backed out, almost convinced himself to tough it out, almost convinced himself he didn't deserve support. But then a memory hit him, something she said at the elevator. You don't have to face everything alone. Aiden exhaled. Then he pressed call. The phone didn't even ring twice. Mara? His voice was barely a whisper. Aiden? She sounded alert, not groggy. Are you okay? The question cracked something open inside him. I'm not. He hadn't said those words to anyone in years. Mara didn't flood him with questions, didn't push. She just said, "Tell me where you are, I'm coming." He protested, weakly. You don't have to. I know, she said. I want to. 20 minutes later, she was sitting on his living room floor with him, holding a warm mug of tea she'd made in his kitchen, listening as he finally, slowly, painfully, explained everything. The accident, the fear, the spiral, the loneliness. Not perfectly, not eloquently, but honestly. Mara didn't fix anything. She didn't offer motivational speeches. She didn't tell him to think positive. She just stayed. And for Aiden, who had built his identity on the belief that people leave, sitting there with someone who didn't, it felt like the world had cracked open in a different way. Not from crisis, but from possibility. He didn't say it out loud, but a small, fragile thought settled in his chest. Maybe I don't have to stay small forever. Mara didn't disappear after that night. That was the first thing Aiden noticed. In the past, whenever he opened up even a little, people drifted. Not because they were cruel, just because emotional depth made things complicated, and complicated things were easy to walk away from. But Mara, she showed up the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Not in overwhelming ways, not in clingy ways, just consistently, like her presence was something natural, not conditional, something steady. Aiden wasn't used to steady. He didn't know how to trust it at first. He waited for the shift, the moment when she'd pull away, reduce contact, forget, get tired. He watched for signs with quiet vigilance, expecting disappointment the way other people expect sunrise. But it didn't come. Instead, their friendship deepened in the small, everyday moments. At work, she started inviting him to sit with her during lunch. Not with pressure, but with the soft warmth of someone who genuinely enjoyed his company. Sometimes he said yes, sometimes no. Either way, she remained consistent. On weekends, she'd send him photos of street art she found, or pastries she tried, or sunsets she thought he'd appreciate. Not to demand attention, just to connect. When Ava started healing and life settled again, Aiden assumed the closeness with Mara would fade. Crisis bonding, he thought. Temporary intimacy. A moment that would dissolve once things were stable. But it didn't. Mara wasn't there for the crisis. She was there for him, and that realization scared him. The more he let her in, the more he felt that old fear rising. The fear of losing someone who mattered, of depending, of caring, of needing. But something else began rising too. A new internal voice, quieter but growing. You're allowed to want people. You're allowed to be known. You're allowed to be worth staying for. It wasn't a loud revelation. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow, like thawing after a long winter. One evening, a few weeks after the hospital night, Aiden and Mara sat at a small cafe. Mara was sketching again. Tiny drawings on napkins, the kind she said helped her think. Aiden watched her, the soft tapping of her pencil, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the serene concentration on her face. He didn't realize he'd been staring until she looked up. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," Aiden said, then paused, then added quietly, "I'm glad you're here." Mara didn't tease him for saying it. She didn't make it bigger than it was. She just smiled, a warm, gentle smile. "I'm glad too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while before she asked, "Can I draw you again?" "Why?" he said, half curious, half self-conscious. "Because you look different now," she said, like someone who's not hiding as much. Aiden felt something unfold in his chest. Not fear this time, something lighter. "Okay," he said. As she sketched, he watched her hands move. Steady, careful, intentional. That was how she treated him too. Not as someone fragile, not as someone distant, just as someone worth effort, worth patience, worth staying for. He'd never been drawn with that version of himself before. Later, when she turned the napkin around, he saw something new in the lines of the sketch. Not the familiar sadness, not the guarded expression. Something softer, something more open. "You captured me," he murmured, surprised. Mara shook her head gently. "No, you let me." Aiden looked at the drawing again, and this time he felt it, not just saw it. He was changing. He wasn't fixed. He wasn't healed. He wasn't suddenly fearless. But he was learning. Learning that people don't always leave. Learning that letting someone in isn't the same as losing control. Learning that connection doesn't have to be a countdown. A few days later, Aiden found himself hanging a photo on his apartment wall. A small print Mara had given him of one of her illustrations. It was the first piece he'd put up in his living space in years. It wasn't just a decoration. It was a quiet declaration. I'm building a life worth staying in. I'm letting people matter. I'm learning how to stay and how to let others stay. And for the first time in a very long time, Aiden didn't brace himself for the goodbye. He allowed himself to hope for the staying.